Alright, what we're going to do today is we're going to show you how, if you want to do your own deer meat, put it in the cooler, soak it, get all the gamey flavor out, and cut it up yourself. We're going to kind of show you what we're doing here. What I've done is 2 days ago after I shot my deer, I cut all the meat off the deer, put all the meat in the cooler, and it's been soaking. It soaked it for 1 day in water and ice and quite a bit of salt from a salt can. The next day ice was pretty much getting where it was melted. I drained it all off. I used one of these coolers that has spout on the bottom, so it's easy to drain off. Redid the deer meat yesterday. Let it soak again overnight. Put more ice on it. Second batch, I added a little bit of vinegar in with it. No more than a cup for sure. It's just to take some of the gamey taste out. All the salt is to draw the blood out. And so put more ice on it, a couple of bags of ice each time, and water enough to cover all the meat. And then I came out here and we drained it off. Show you that. Just in a cooler. Meat was really red when we put it in there. Now you can see it's really turned pale. Gets a lot of the gamey taste out. If you have any friends or family that's ever tried deer meat and say they don't like it, it's usually because it's not done correctly. It's a really wild taste. But if you can get a lot of the blood and the gamey taste out, it works great. So what we're fixing to do is we're going to go back in the house and we're going to go in there and cut it up in different ways, and I'm just going to kind of show you how we're doing that. Alright, this is the most simple thing. This is a tenderloin. You see it's got this white fascia type skin over the top. What we're going to do is we're going to cut that off. What I've got is a Rapala filleting knife. You can get it at Walmart, Academy, Gander Mountain, just about anywhere. There's all kinds of different kinds, but this Rapala, I've had this for a long time, and I just sharpened it up again in about 30 strokes. It sharpens really good, and it stays sharp for a while. So I like to use these because you can get under the skin really easy, and you don't waste a lot of meat. I'm sure you may be able to see videos or whatever from actual butchers and people that do this for a living. There may be better ways of doing it. I've just kind of learned through the years to do it as I go, because I got tired of spending money at the processor. So anyway, you can start anywhere on here. You just want to be able to get just under the skin there. Try to cut a lot of this fascia off, because those leaders and fascia skin is what makes meat really tough. A lot of people will maybe tell you you can cut your meat in certain ways, going across the grain and things like that, that makes your meat more tender, but I've done it both ways. I can't tell a difference, because before I cook it, especially if I'm going to fry it or grill it, unless it's a big steak, like a ribeye type steak of deer, if it's smaller, I usually take a tenderizer and tenderize it anyway, so you don't have to get real picky with it. You just want to kind of get under the skin here as thin as you can. You're going to waste a little, but not enough to make a difference really. You want to get most of this white stuff cut off, just like so. Something I don't know if I said a while ago, you just want to be sure and rinse your meat real good, which that's kind of a given, because you'll probably see some hair and things on it possibly from when you did your meat. So just make sure you rinse it real good. Get it zoomed in a little closer here. This is heart of one of the back hams. You know, I mentioned soaking it in a cooler. A lot of times I will cut the whole quarter off, bone and all, and you can still soak it that way. In this situation, I already cut the meat off the bone before I put it in the cooler, so it's a little easier to get started quicker. I got a trash can sitting over here right now that I'm putting all this fat in. What you'll find is usually about mid-October, you'll find that a lot of especially your does and bucks, both really, will be really fat. They have a lot of fat on the outside of the meat. You want to cut that off, because you don't want that in with your steaks. Because it's not the same as beef fat. It doesn't really give it flavor. You can try it, but I don't recommend it. But you just start anywhere. I mean, you just look here, you can see where this more red here. You see some white here, you want to cut that off. And also too, you know, I took this off of ice just a little bit ago. It makes your meat so much easier to cut when it's really cold. So you want to keep it getting cold. Much easier to work with. Okay, I've got the majority of it here. About done on this side. And like I said, if you've never done it before, just be creative. I mean, it's better than paying $80, $90 to have somebody else do it. So once you get used to it, it will take you an hour or so to do it all. Okay, this side's pretty well done, as you can see. Looks pretty good. All this stuff here, you wonder what that is? That's just stuff that didn't have fat on it, I didn't cut. It's just some of the meat that was that light pale color after soaking it. I can flop it over here and you see all kinds of stuff, all kinds of different muscle groups. A lot of this fascia here, silver skin, some people call it. So I'm just going to be creative and I'm going to start cutting it off. Go ahead and cut that muscle group off. As you can see, it's different, just connected by that fascia. Now that I can make into some good steaks. Take it off to the side. Another muscle group here. I'm going to kind of cut some of this stuff off. Connective tissue. That's another muscle group there. I'm going to go ahead and just cut through the thinnest part of it. Another small muscle group. And so forth. We're about done here, so I'm going to pause it for a second and I'll finish cleaning this up. Alright, at this point you just got to decide what you want to do. Do you want some big steaks? Do you want all small steaks? I've got a grinder. I'm not using it tonight. I'm just kind of doing tenderloins and steaks with everything, because that's what we eat the most of. If you do ground meat, it's better to add like beef or pork fat, whichever you prefer with it. You can usually get it at the local grocery store. This year's going to be my first year to use a grinder, so I'm kind of do that too. But later in the season we'll do some grinding. But today I'm just cutting everything up in steaks. This is a pretty good chunk here. I like to take my really big chunks. As you can see here real close, you can see the grain. It goes this way. A lot of people will tell you, to cut it, a half inch or so, and then come across here. It's more tender that way. May be the case with these hams or back thighs, but I've tried it both ways, and I can't really tell the difference either way. Because, like I say, before I fry it or grill it, actually with grilling it, I don't tenderize it at all because it's thicker steaks. But the thinner steaks I do, kind of like tenderloins. I don't tenderize my tenderloins because they're already tender, but these thighs and stuff, if I'm going to cut them into this size and fry them, I will tenderize them because that'll be pretty tough, especially if there's any kind of underlying silver skin or fascia in there. So I'm going to use this for some steaks. So what I'm going to do is, that's a pretty good size. I'm going to go ahead and leave that size. That's a good size steak. I'll make about 3 steaks out of that, and that's going to be pretty thick. So we're going to start here. We'll cut our first one. This is actually not going to be real thick on one end because that just got it pretty level. I can actually cut that off and use it as a smaller steak, sort of. Put it over there to fry. This one here can be used as a smaller grilling steak, about a ½ inch thick. And this one here I'll cut one time for some good big ribeyes. I know they're not actually ribeyes, but that's what they remind me of, so that's what I call them. Okay, just like that. And not super thick. I kind of botched that one a little bit. That's a pretty good one there. You still see some more of that there. You want to go ahead and try to cut that off. Like I said, with these flame knives, you can really get good and thin. That's what you need to try to do. There we go. You get a good grilling ribeye right there. Just make sure if you season it up or whatever you do, I cook it just like a regular beef. I do it about medium. If you cook it closer to well done, it's not going to be that great. It's going to be drier. Cook it about medium to medium rare, closer to medium. They're excellent. Put some your favorite seasoning on there. It'll be a good ribeye there. That one get a little thin in the middle, but it'll still be good. I can use that I can package that one as one of the smaller grilling steaks there. All these other muscle groups, you just got to decide what you want to do. If you can't, you can do like a New York strip with that if you want. What I can do is I can go ahead and cut this end off here. Make this into some frying steaks like I did the tenderloins back there in that group. And here, make me some New York strips. Just one down the middle. Just like so. Usually the stuff that I can't make big steaks out of is when I do the smaller steaks. That's about, you can do anything. You can do beef tips, you can do anything you want. But if you have a weekend, during the road or something, and you and your buddies kill, 2 or 3 deer, and you're having to do all this on 3 deer, and it kind of gets time consuming, you can always do the stuff just like this, vacuum seal it, put it in the freezer, and then when you get ready to cook it, you can always take it out later if you're in a hurry. Cut it into whatever you want, so it's really whatever your preference is. This will be another pretty good steak here, so we're going to leave that like that. That's a good 3/4 of an inch to an inch thick. I might go ahead and level this side up down here so it looks more like a steak. That's not really cookable really, so I'm just going to ditch it. And this one, it's kind of got pieces to it, so I'm just going to do this in the smaller steaks to fry. They don't have to look pretty, they eat all the same really. So this one here, cut this one twice. The ones that you fry, you don't want them super thick usually because they tend to get too tough, especially with these hams. Like I said, be real careful that you don't cut yourself because these things are sharp. Like so. Okay, go ahead and turn the video off for a second. Alright, the other ham here, I'm not going to show the whole video on this. That right there is actually something I did when I was cutting off the deer. Maybe later if I think about it. I have someone video when I'm cutting the meat off a deer, but what that is I cut the meat off on the ground. I never hung the deer, I never gutted the deer or anything. So, it just went straight off the deer and into the cooler. And a lot of times when you're cutting that meat off, it's in an awkward position. You can just take your hunting knife, stab you a hole, and use it as a thumb hole to raise that leg up and cut around it. So I get some more of this rinsed off. But you're the one eating the deer. You see this? This is something that's a little bloodshot. Anything you see on there that doesn't look real natural, just cut it off. I mean, there's really no right answer. Just want to get those spots out that you definitely don't want to eat. It wouldn't hurt you, but it may be a little different taste or something, so it comes off really easy. It's just skin deep, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of this off. I'm just cutting up the deer because the rest of it is just bits and pieces of meat that I cut off, and then we're going to vacuum seal it. Alright, down to the last of the meat. What you'll see here is a whole bunch of chunks. A lot of it may be, you'll notice when you get too far down on the leg, you're going to get into a lot of leaders that make the meat really tough. But this stuff is stuff that wasn't as bad. Maybe stuff from the leg, some from the shoulder, some from around the neck that doesn't have too many leaders in it. I know it kind of looks like it does, but it's not too awful bad compared to what some of it is. And on some of this, you're still going to find different muscle groups here, like so. And it gets pretty tedious cutting a lot of that stuff off. So you can try to take your time and try to go just a little bit by little bit and get a lot of that off. And that's what I'm fixing to do right now. I'll just start with one piece here. This one's not so bad. Let me find a more complicated piece, and I'll pause the video for a little bit. Let's just start with this one. This one looked kind of a lot of the stuff right here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is, you can just start anywhere. Start cutting chunks of that out. I know it looks like a lot of meat to waste, but you'll find a lot of that stuff is just mostly fat and liters in there, and it's just going to make it really tough. So there's no use in trying to save that. You'll spend the first, couple years possibly trying to save every little bit you can, and I'm not one for waste either, but you'll find that a lot of that stuff that you tried to save and spend a lot of time on ended up being really, really tough. So if you're planning on maybe slow cooking it, making it more tender for barbecue or something, that's fine. So just do whatever's best for you. See, that was a very, very thin layer of meat there, and it's mostly made up of that stuff. And it's not really worth saving. So as you cut into it, you'll just kind of pick and choose on what you can save and what you can't. This looks like a decent cut of meat here, so I'm going to take my time and kind of cut around, get some of that white skin off. So this is the stuff you get into. It's more time consuming, obviously, compared to what I've already done. So a little bit more on the side. Here. Now we can cut it once through here. Really small piece, but you can make stuff like that for just kebabs and little pieces you'll cook for breakfast or whatever you want. So stuff you don't want to waste necessarily. So we'll keep that for a little steak there. There's a little bit of thin, gooey skin there. Cut that off. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and finish all this up. Alright, and then we'll vacuum seal. Alright, we're ready to vacuum seal. I have one of the cheapest vacuum sealers you can get. It's kind of loud. You push down on one or two corners. Pretty loud, but it's cheap. It does the same job as anything else. So you don't have to get really expensive with things. Food Saver, Ziploc, they all make these vacuum seal bags. I bought these at Sam's because it was a better deal. You get a lot more bags in different sizes. Use whatever you want. I'm just going to do a quick clip here, and I'll be done on vacuum sealing. It's just preference, whatever you like. But typically it depends on who's eating. Obviously, in your house, it's me and my wife and my baby. So typically, I will do my big steaks. Let me find some scissors here. I'll do my big steaks in twos by pairs. So you just gotta try to guess about how much you're going to need as far as the size of the bag. You want to cut it pretty straight, and I'll show you why here in just a second. There are little markers. It's kind of hard to tell on this white back, but I can see it pretty good. There's little markers. You can tell you're cutting it pretty straight or not. Now to seal it here, you don't want to go over the rubber piece seal that you see here. You just want to go over this this little brown spot here. This is actually what just doesn't vacuum, it only seals. It tells you right here, hands free means you can let go. It's sealing. When it shuts off, you hit the button to open this. Alright, it just sealed that right there. So now I'll stick my steaks in this side. I'll just do a couple real quick for you. Two steaks in here, like so. I can make a little gap in them. So they seal, each one seals pretty good. Now, this here, the way this certain sealer works, you want to lap this over the top and inside this trough. There's a removable trough here. And see if we can get that to stay. Sometimes it's hard to get it to stay with these cheaper ones. you got to make sure it's good and flat all the way across the sealer. Hold it down. It'll tell you when you go hands-free. Hands-free. Sealing is done, and it's sealed. And that will keep you from freezer burning in the freezer. You can label these before or after. It's usually easier before. Label them however you remember them. So that way when you pull them out of the deep freezer, your upright freezer, you'll know exactly what it is. And I would date it as well. Let me get a marker out of here. So this one here, I will do October 2013, and I'm going to say big steaks. And I'll label all of mine that way, then I'll do small steaks, or smaller ribeyes, whatever you want to say, and then tenderloins, of course. And that's how it works. Right quick, something else you might want to do. I've got several paper towels here. You might want to blot your meat because all that's stacked in there, you can see some of the blood kind of gets pooled. So you might want to blot your meat before you put it in the bag. That way it keeps from, when it's vacuuming, it wants to suck all that juices out as well. And you'll end up getting a whole lot of fluid or blood in your trough. So it might be best to blot your meat, especially the stuff on the bottom. You can see it looks pretty wet there. So at least do that, and it won't be near as much of a mess. Okay, that's it. Hope it helps you.